With me today, I have four gentlemen who started a company called FilmTec, which probably changed the future of the membrane industry, certainly for the betterment of the users everywhere. On my right is Eugene Erickson. Next to him is Roy Larson. Next to him is Bob Peterson. And to my far right is Harlan Jacob. Now these four gentlemen started a company called FilmTec and went into the membrane business.
We formed the company, and Gene and I one day at lunch said, looks like there's a future in reverse osmosis. The industry has started. What's needed is a membrane. The techniques for making modules are there. The market is there. The OEM structure is great. There are qualified people making and selling systems. That maybe we should form a company based on the experience that Gene had, not me, to develop a membrane that could propel the company into its excellent position that it now enjoys. So one day after lunch in September, Gene and I said, let's start this, let's take the bull by the horns. So we left jobs that were very secure. We were both directors then at the time at the Institute, and we went in and resigned with no job in hand, nothing. And we formed FilmTec, as Gene mentioned. We incorporated in September 15th, 1977, and we personally signed for 5,000 square feet of space in a building in Minnetonka, Minnesota. And it was a very lonely feeling, I'll tell you, to walk in there to see nothing except us and our confidence that we could do something. We didn't know for sure what, but we knew then that Bob and John were going to join us. We were smart enough to talk to them and get their agreement to join us.
North Star, we learned from an earlier interview, you were casting membrane, but it was pretty small, and you used cells for testing the membrane, but you never actually rolled anything at North Star. So you go over to this building where Roy and Gene are sitting on crates, and this old hospital furniture is there. How did you come up with a casting machine?
Well, I'll just address that initially, and Bob too. We knew that the paper industry had many years of experience in working with sheets. We also had, I'm very thankful that we had good consultants who had worked at UOP and elsewhere, so we learned a lot there. And after a lot of thinking and wringing our hands, and with advice from the consultants, Bob and John and I guess several of us pitched in and came up with a 1 foot wide machine, because we needed sheet membrane to make this work. We were thinking of names for the company and names for the membrane. And one of us bright guys said, how about thin film technologies? And Gene said, no, I don't like that. How about film technologies? Then I don't know who said it, whether it was Grace or Gene, but they said, let's call it FilmTec. And then as far as the membrane, John said in one a newsletter that since Gene was the oldest, he could name it, and he wanted to call it the FT3000, but that was too big of a number, and pretty soon it got down to FT300. But then we said, in the newspaper business, that's the 3-0 mark for tonight, means this is the ultimate. So we called it FT30. I thought it's a little tidbit that someone might want to hear.
Well, that's exactly why you're here, for those tidbits. So how long was it before, how long was it after you started up before you produced your first 40-inch long membrane?
Ooh, Bob?
I guess I don't know the exact time any longer, but it would be probably late 1980, probably 81.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All we could make at that time was 12-inch wide membrane. but I figured out a way in which we could butt splice the membrane. And if we butt splice 4 of them, we could make something of a 40-inch length element. So I sat down with Rob Forrester and we designed a machine to actually do this, and went into production of 40-inch long elements that way.
Yeah,
And we put
had-
them into modules that we got from Darby so that no one saw what was in the inside of it.
Well,
Didn't we?
well, it was butt splicer. You wouldn't know,
Yeah.
except that there was a slight hump, 3 slight humps.
Another tidbit, if you got time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Edit these all out. We were working with some companies in England. I think it was Weir Westgarth or another one, and it was during the Falkland War. And we had sent some elements over there to be tested, some seawater elements, and they worked out real well. And I was over there on a business trip, and I was getting ready to go home. I was at the airport, getting ready to go on a plane, and got a rush message from them saying, "We want to talk to you." So they explained the situation that they had to replace the desalination systems on the ships going over there. Could we get some elements to them? And I said, well, we'll try. We did. So our elements were used successfully in the wartime basis for the Falkland War.
You know, how can I beat this? I said, well, you can persuade Infilco to go into the municipal membrane market. And so he tried, and they never would bite. So poor old George, I didn't feel that sorry for him because he'd made a pretty good living, but he lost a lot of sales to nanofiltration. How did you come up with the idea for a nanofiltration membrane? I mean, you did some work early on with a membrane that had softening properties, but
Well,
what
Bob
made you
will-
think it was commercial?
Well, we had enough contact with the industry and talking to people that there was a place for such a membrane. And often people use their membranes that failed on salt rejection and called it nanofiltration. But Bob and John actually worked on developing a membrane that had good flux and in salt rejection and high flow. And I'm not positive, and I can't, but I think we coined the term nanofiltration.
Yes, you did.
I can't
I'm
prove
pretty
that,
sure
but I
you
remember
did.
a meeting. Tom Stern was there, and Bob and a few others, and we said, well, this is not reverse osmosis, it's not ultrafiltration, it's nano, because we knew that nano was 10 to the minus 9. It was particles that were larger than for reverse osmosis. Do you remember that, Bob?
I do. I was sitting with Tom Stern talking about the problem. We had tried the term hybrid RO because it was somewhere in between ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis. And our Japanese contact, Kawamura, said, that does not translate well into Japanese. So I suggested to Tom Stern that we're talking about something with a pore size of around 10 angstroms or 1 nanometer. Nano's got a nice reputation in the industry here of nano-grade solvents. Let's call this a nano-type membrane.
Right.
And so we end up with the term nanofiltration.
If you had to do it again, would you do it again? Gene?
I think so. It was something that just with the level of experience that we had, and it was something that we weren't smart enough to realize what thin ice we were treading on. And so it was just the right time for us. Why? It just felt it fulfilled a need that we had to be active and make something.